It's Real Fit Radio with B
and J.LOU.
If this is your first time listening, welcome. And if you're a returning listener, welcome back.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I ain't got no quote for you today. I'm good. I hope you good too. I hope y'all good in the world as well.
Okay. I was anticipating.
You never anticipate them quotes.
You guys can't see us, you can only hear us, but because we do so much together, Lou and I, he doesn't know I see these different faces and stuff. He looks like he is like, I'm over it, let's get this done.
No, it wasn't that. It's actually the technical difficulties every week that I'm facing. Sometimes it gets a little annoying.
With the
podcast has nothing to do with my
with just us with the mics
it's
and things like that.
Subtle things that I'm always having to tinker and figure out before we start. It's never a clean start.
We had a lot of clean start.
Clean start or a clean finish. What was the week before, it was some minor issue where it was some static noise. Then the following issue was something else. Now this one was like the mic wasn't reading. So there are behind the scene things have been happening. So yeah.
This is going to be a great podcast because I've been thinking about levels of love and all the things, the roses and the great moments in the beginning. But there's so many levels to it. And I don't think people really are ready for it. Like, are you really ready for love? Because the different levels I've experienced with you specifically.
Where are you getting at now?
Well, because it's so funny. So, as I've alluded to through all the podcasts, we work together. We're husband and wife. This is my friend. We create together. I work on his stuff with him. If it's creative input musically or just some feedback he wants, vice versa. And when it's like I want to bounce ideas off of someone, Lou's my go-to guy. He's my sound person. He wears many hats. And so it's very interesting. And not even if a relationship has all that stuff. It could just be husband, wife, and running a household, whatever it is. Everybody's relationship is different, but I believe there's nothing new under the sun. There's some very similar areas in all the relationships. You got that unconditional love. You have that I want to punch you in your face love. Like, oh my God, you're really working my nerves. And sometimes I'm super giddy and Lou's face is just like, look, we're going to get through this podcast.
It's not even that.
I don't think it's the podcast, but I'm just saying.
That's the third week something has like happened. That's what
But we still get the podcast out though. But you look good though.
It's not the point.
Anyway. I think you need to really prepare yourself. If you're in a relationship or you're wanting one, ask yourself, are you ready for love? Because it will stretch you. You ever hear the song, there are poems, but I heard in the song, love is patient, love is kind. Love sometimes is a painful truth because you have to tell somebody something in love. You're saying, I'm saying this to you in love, but you're not going to like it. But hopefully this makes you better. When they say that, I'm having a brain freeze here. What is it? Where it's like, this is the painful truth. And that's not the one I'm thinking of. I'm thinking about. Gosh, it'll come to me. But when you love somebody, initially you have that honeymoon phase. And I'm not talking about honeymoon marriage. I'm saying when you meet and you're getting to know each other and you might overlook a few things or like, I'm not going to be a stickler when it comes to this, or I'm going to overlook that. It's not a big deal. But as you grow into your relationship and you were tested in a lot of areas, the word love changes. How you love somebody changes. And I'm just saying that just for we've experienced. Just the it's so funny because I know I get on Lou's nerves some days. And I know that he loves me so much because I still do what I want to do. And it's not in a bad way. Like, for instance, Lou will go to sleep before me sometimes. I'm a big movie buff. You guys know that. And if your first time listening, you know now. But I love watching movies and I'll stay up really, really late and not always watching movies, but I'm just up. I'm thinking. I'll do a whole recap of the day. What were your thoughts on this? We'll revisit conversations and Lou will start to doze off. I call it powering down. He will power down mid-sentence. And when he does, I'll poke him, mess with his head, pull his ear, pinch his back, just any little thing, mess with his eyelashes, grab his nose. This shit I know that's annoying. Like, I would not want somebody to do that to me. I know that for sure. Like, I would be like, what are you doing? But he's so chill, because it's like, why would you do that? And I'll be like, because I want you to stay up. Don't go to sleep yet. It's 11. Just at least give me till 12:30 because I'm still talking or whatever it is. And I know I'm being like super whiny, just being spoiled because I want him to stay up or I want to go to sleep before him. And that's like some childish shit. That's our relationship. But I know he can deal with that. And I'm sure in another relationship it's something someone else is like, that's just him. That's her. So I'll throw it over to you. There's something that he might allude to, like, oh yeah. I'm not going to say specifically, I'm going to allude to, she deals with some things too, but those things you don't know in the beginning. I used to say, I think that when you meet a person, they should have shirts with fine print on the bottom where you could see all the bullshit, all the stuff that they're not going to tell you, that you're going to learn throughout the course of you guys courting and becoming monogamous and then possibly married. You're still learning, but nobody tells you all that stuff in the beginning. So that love is stretched. The person that you initially met that you were very attracted to, physically, intellectually, and they're always on time or they're doing this and that, those things change. It doesn't mean they won't still have those areas that they're very strong in, but there's other stuff that will stretch you. So are you ready for love? Because it's not just that one level. It's ever changing. And I don't think everybody's ready for it. I mean, sometimes I'm still trying to figure stuff out because I want to get better with this. But yeah, that's what we're talking about today, tonight, tomorrow, yesterday, whatever time you're hearing this podcast. You look good though.
I definitely know one of the things you tolerate that I do, which is my tonality. I always have this tone that most people would think that I have an attitude, and she still thinks sometimes I have an attitude, but it's just more or less like I understand who he is now. Originally, when I first was doing it, you had this thing like, why you sound like you mad all the time? Or you all right? And it's like, I'm fine. This is just the way I talk. And even though it's not the best tonality to have when you're speaking to somebody, you have a better understanding, like, whatever. Anyways, we need to go do this today because such and such. It's not like what it used to be in terms of I do it and then you take offense to it. It's just like, I don't care what you doing. And you go on to the pinching and the poking or whatever it is that you do and you moving on with your day. I think that's one of the bigger things that I can think of just right off the top. Before it's just love in general and dealing with it. Love is always evolving, just like anything else. It never stays the same because as you're getting older, things change for better or worse sometimes. But in the midst of it, you're just trying to figure out the way to not just compromise, but you try to be patient with certain things, I guess. But it should be getting better always, in my opinion. Are we referring to relationships or marriage or whatnot? Because there's different forms of love. I don't want to just want to be talking about love and relationships if you just talking about love in general like that.
Well, love is love with anything. It's like, are you ready for love when you have a child? When you loving your parents? I spoke on the relationship, but it's like, are you ready for love? And I think in some instances with relationships specifically, I don't think anybody's ready if they haven't fallen in love with themselves. I think that's what makes it so frustrating sometimes in relationship with children and your mate. It's hard for you to give something to somebody else that you aren't even giving yourself.
Well, I ain't even going into all that because honestly,
you don't have to, because I just did.
You're going into that bag. Most times it's about being selfless to me.
Right, but it's not a bag. It's a purse.
Whatever. I don't care what it is.
You guys, if you listened to us before, I wish you could see his face. His head is kind of cocked back and he got his arms folded and it's like, you going into that bag. This tonality, it tickles me. But if you're listening, it's like, he's not upset. He's not flustered. This is Lou.
But
he's coming at you raw and uncut.
I've spoken in this tone before.
But but anybody that's listened before, you can feel it.
Love before. I think we've covered this a couple of times.
No. Are you ready for love? We haven't covered anything about being ready for love. Are you ready for it? Because love will stretch you. Some people may think they're ready for it and they're not. Were you ready for love? In the beginning, you might not have been. I know you weren't ready for just...
No, well, here's the thing. I've always been ready for love, because that thing you just said, love is patient. The only thing, I mean, not the only thing, one of the things I needed to adjust, obviously, is the kindness part in terms of how I exemplified it. But that patience shit and compromising, that's one of the biggest things about love to me, in my opinion, is being patient with someone and being able to compromise. The problem with most situations, and not just relationships, in my opinion, is people are selfish by nature. If you're able to compromise with someone, it doesn't matter what it is. It's simply, for me, being patient enough to understand the person and where they're coming from, to try to figure out the best way to deal with someone with all their flaws and all their positives, and being selfless. That's one of the biggest things for me when it comes to, are you ready for love? Was I ready for love? Yeah, I've always been ready for love in terms of that. It's other elements that you can't be ready for, because you have to experience it with that person before you even know what to deal with. Everybody is different. Every situation is different. I can't say I'm ready for love for certain things when you're dealing with a child if I haven't had a child. But those core things about being patient, what was the other thing I said? Being patient, because I'm losing my thought. I'm trying to hold both of them at the same time.
What you mean?
I said being patient, and what did I just say? I can't remember. Never mind, because you can't remember either. I just said the two core things that kept me, because you said, are you ready for love? And I said, I've been ready for love in that sense, because it's patience and compromise. That's the other one. You wasn't paying attention to what I said.
Teacher Lou said I wasn't paying attention, y'all.
Usually you're able to tell me what I said.
I might get detention.
You ain't get no detention. Those two elements are two of the most important to me, because if you don't have those two, nothing else will even matter. Compromising goes hand in hand with being selfless. Most people ain't ready for love because they can't get past themselves sometimes either. It ain't just because I don't love myself. There's plenty of people out there running around that love themselves. They love themselves so much that they don't really want to give to other people the way they want somebody to give to them. So if you're not ready to compromise and be patient with somebody that you don't know everything about, then no, you wouldn't be. Obviously, there's more to it, but those are my two core things.
Well, you're a tough act to follow. I'm just trying to gather my thoughts, and really,
you just went into a bag where you
no,
said,
actually, I'm being really silly because you said, we talked about this before. And the beauty...
I was saying we've touched bases on this before when we was talking about in terms of love and what you have to have in order for it to be ready. You said, are you ready? Which is understandable. It's a different way of talking about it.
Right. And one of my strong suits that I was born ready, like you were born ready for love, is I'm a great conversationalist. Lou will say, we talked about something, not even with this. It's very interesting because I will come back and ask him something and he'll say, didn't we talk about this? And also, no, we talked about this part of it, but I want to talk about this part. There are several aspects to this particular thing that I'm wanting us to dive or dig into. So with this podcast, I really like to find an area. We talk about unconditional love. We talk about, are you ready for love? I said there are levels to love. Loving your neighbor, that might be something. Loving yourself, self-love. Falling in love with your children, the love from a parent to a child. There's so many different levels, like I said initially in the beginning, to love. We could have several podcasts about love. This particular one that I've been thinking about is, are you ready for it? And I think you can ask for something and you really aren't ready. He said patience and compromise. I remember in the beginning of just marriage, lose patience because he was used to being by himself. He didn't have to not think for me, but his decisions affected someone else directly, indirectly. So it's like, oh, so I don't think some people are ready for that. You might think you are, and then you get into it and it's like, damn, when I made a decision, it was on me. If I decide to go out and party or quit my job or want to be irresponsible, or I decide that I don't want to budget, whatever it is, all those decisions fall on you. When you enter into a relationship with children and even a spouse, now your decisions directly and indirectly affect someone else. I've heard young girls, I want a baby, I want a baby. Oh, I want a mini me, I want a baby. And then they have a baby and all they thought was, oh, I would love to see someone that looks like me and they're so cute. They dress like me and it's just cute to have a baby. But that whole selfless thing comes in. I always say, I hear what you're saying, but I'm watching what you're doing. You don't have to tell me anything. Your actions tell me everything. People say stuff and then do a whole different thing. I can say, oh, I'm patient, compromise, I'm selfless. But then when you put those things to the test, it can be a whole nother ballgame. Like, wait a minute. Well, you said you was patient. Yeah, but you trying my patience though. Yeah, but you said you was patient, but it's being stretched. That's what I'm talking about with love. We've talked about it before where it's like, are you ready to give in that capacity? Even in love with friendships, some people, it's just like, I'm not ready to nurture that type of friendship. And that's a modicum of love you may want to give to somebody. Like, I love you, but you stretching me in a different way. So friendships end. And it's like, I thought we was better than that. I thought we had love for each other. And it's like, I do, but I can't give to you in the capacity that you stretching me right now. You doing a lot and it's taking a toll on me in such a way that I can't do that. And I think at that point, because that's another level of love, you might have to back up off of a person. And these are two adults and they call it tough love. That's what I was talking about earlier. You got unconditional love, and sometimes tough love requires some things where it's just like, damn, I really love this person. Family, friend, husband, wife, I love them, but I love you so much. I'm gonna have to exercise some tough love here because you're hurting yourself, and me going through this with you is hurting me too. When people deal with drug addictions and all kind of stuff. So when I say, are you ready for love? I think when you ask for something, it's positioning your mind like, am I really ready to go through the depths of how this can stretch me? Ready to give in a capacity that might be uncomfortable, dedicate myself fully and be selfless even when I don't feel like it, because you're gonna not feel like it. It's one thing to say it. It's another thing for somebody to watch you and be like, hey, you said you was patient? No, you're not being patient with me right now. You're really not. And it's like, I'm giving all the patience I can, but you're not, because I require more. I require more of your patience, more of your compromise. Are you ready for love? That's what I'm talking about. So what is the level of compromise? What is the cutoff? And everybody has their deal breakers.
I was gonna say, there's levels to that, because that old stretching shit, yeah, you might be overstretching something sometimes.
Well, to each his own, but I don't think you really know it, like you said, until you're in it. There's all the beginning parts. He, she looks good. I love my baby. I love them. And then they start to grow and do things. And that's family, friends, spouse. And you start seeing things that stretch you. And you really don't know the depth sometimes of what you will and will not accept. Some things you might have been like, whoo, now that I'm out of that, and not out of the relationship, but now that we've overcome this, or we went through and we're on the other side of this thing, I never thought I could deal with someone in this capacity. Big thing in relationships. I've seen people overcome through counseling affairs, cheating, children that are a product of infidelity. I feel like I can't do that. I can't, because the betrayal so much, and why did we not communicate at some point? That's a lot for me, because it's never really going to be something that's fully off the table, but I've never experienced it. So I'm going in saying I can't. I'm not wishing that here, but the level that I love you, I don't know if you could stretch me in that. I don't know how I would feel. I know I'd be angry, but then these other things come into play. Do you stay together? Do you not? Why did it happen? What was going on? Was this something I did? You start figuring that out when it happens. I've told you this story. I dated a guy in college that was like 6'5", big, bad, ripped up, protector. And he was always looking at somebody like, don't look at my girl. I thought he was a great guy. He just was a little overprotective. And I was always, please don't stare at somebody too hard because you feel like they're being a certain way to me, or you might have thought they looked at him. It was always something. So I felt like I was calming him down so that he didn't do something to them, because he's this big guy. But when a certain situation came up, he ran. You know what I'm saying? And it was just like, whoa, never expected that. Never would have thought in a million years that would happen. And once it was put on the table and I experienced it, it changed everything. How I feel about this dude now that this happened, this guy that presented himself as, I'm upset, I'm angry because I'm protecting you and I don't like when people treat me this way, and so on and so forth. So saying you're ready and you can equip yourself and then being in it. That's how I'm looking at Are You Ready for Love? The stretching of it. And it will stretch you. And I think you have to go and grow through that type of stuff to even know. For me, I wasn't ready for certain levels of love. And once I encountered them, it was like, whoa, this is stretching me. I'll leave that to any parent out there. Children, the love you have for them, and when you're an involved parent, it will stretch you in a way. I mean, you just want to wring their neck. And then there's a detaching where it's like, I love you, but I have to let you do you. But you're watching somebody have their own free will, and you've cared for them from the time they were in the womb. You protected them and took care of them physically and tried to prepare them mentally. And you were on guard for anybody that wanted to hurt them or thought they was going to do something to them. And now here they are. And if they do some stupid stuff, you just like, wait a minute. My level of love right here has to be, I love you enough to let you go on your own journey, to allow you to learn and grow from this, to step back, bridle my tongue and just be like, ooh, the information that's planted, I have to watch what they do. That's love. And it's hard, but you could say you prepare for that, but that stuff happens and that hurt. It tears you up. So that's what I'm talking about when I say, are you ready for love? And I love that you said the compromise and the patience. Are we just alluding it to relationship? And we've been in that bag, but I have never discussed in this capacity. And I wanted to have this dialogue because saying you're ready and you really being ready, and then you hearing a conversation like this for you to revisit, am I ready? And if I was thinking that I was, let me just know there's some areas I could be tested in, that I'm coming in saying, okay, I'm willing to go on the roller coaster for love, but know there are levels to it and you can get stretched.
This sounds no different than athletes then. You can be as prepared as possible, but it ain't enough preparation for game day. Anybody that watch sports can relate to that. You can know what the tendencies are of somebody in front of you when you're playing defense or whatever your objective is, but until you're in it, it's nothing there. It's almost like that interlude that happened on Wale's joint when he was saying you can never be ready.
With Seinfeld?
Yeah, you can never be ready for that. The biggest thing that helped me out in this relationship was compromise and patience. That's why I asked you to a degree that whole, you said you was patient. And it's like, God damn it, I was. But this shit that you doing right here, this is overdoing it. And that's why I said it's levels to somebody's patience and somebody's selflessness and all that. Because at some point, I know I've experienced it where I lost myself in being selfless and patient and compromising and forgot, shit, well, what are you doing for me?
You stop loving on yourself, huh? And trying to give everything to that person.
Back to the point of when I said, for me, that was the most important thing. But you said earlier about loving yourself, which I wasn't trying to shut you down. And then when you said it, I said, oh, well, you getting in that bag. I'm getting over in this bag pertaining to, I'll say it again, patience and compromise. But the loving yourself part is important too, because at some point, I loved myself enough to know that I was being used the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm saying in regards to when you said, are you ready? I don't think you can necessarily be ready. You can be prepared to a degree, but when game day come, you don't know what to expect. Everything that you practice can go out the window.
And now a word from our sponsor, Journey of a Legend.
You. Yeah, you. What's your passion? Purpose. Every day you try, you succeed. The time is now. Journey of a Legend. It starts with you.
If you'd like to learn more or purchase merchandise, go to www.journeyofAlegend.com. You love it enough to try. It's like, I love the game. I've practiced. I'm going to jump out there because I have a passion for this. I love it. I want to get out there and do it.
And the other thing is, love is ever evolving. So what worked before may not work now. I've told you this before, like, not necessarily the detachment that you was talking about, but more or less I told you, you would know instantly that you're outgrowing me in terms of relationship wise. If I ever just said, I'm not going to grow no more at this pace, watching you do things. I don't know if that necessarily is the same thing as, are you ready for love? I guess I'm trying to relate that point to you being patient enough and trying to figure out if that's something. I don't know. I don't
Well, no,
think
I know
that's the
what you're
same
trying
thing.
to. No,
I'm trying to tie it in.
it
but
is. Because what you're saying, and that's a love thing first. When you commit and you're in there, and we're saying, are you ready for it? Like you said with sports, where you've equipped yourself as best you can, and the experience you're having thus far, you're like, I want to try to go the distance. So what you're saying in that is, I'm going to try to excel and grow and water this relationship in the capacity that it flourishes because I love her, or I love, as you do with children, I'm going to do more, try to be more understanding, or try to relate, or come from a stance where I'm seeking to understand rather than be understood because of love.
Well, yeah. In better terms, that's what I was trying to say. Because if you ever stop doing that, then that will throw a ripple. And I don't know if you are necessarily, and I don't mean you in this situation, this is a general statement. I don't necessarily know if the person who is continuing the growth process and the other person is not, how that works in terms of love and being patient and trying to make sure, like, oh, you really stretching me with my patience in terms of you not growing and evolving, because it's almost like you're not caring anymore to a degree. So
I think that's when people begin to revisit in their head. I'm not saying that's
is what I really wanted.
Yeah,
to
that's where things come into play.
That's what I'm trying to tie that into, was the point earlier when you was talking about, yeah, am I really ready for this?
And
at some point you may think that, I don't know, this is maybe a bit much.
Right. And also you can reverse that whole thing. There are things you know right away, like, I'm not doing that, because the capacity of love is not there. I'm not doing all that for the friendship. I'm not having no kids. I'm not doing that. There are people you can think in your head right off that can't get certain things from you that other people can, because of, one, the commitment you have or the relationship and those levels. I think you said all the time, I don't care. So I'm not going to be affected by that. I don't care about what they say or what they think. I don't care. But for someone that you love, it burns sometimes that you care. It might be something you didn't even do wrong. It's like there was an argument that's had. You know the person is wronger than two left shoes, and you really sitting there like, we got to work this out because I'm irritated that they're still irritated. It's tension here, but it has to be resolved. Even though I know you were wrong, they're not going to bring it up. We got to resolve this because I don't like the way this is. And the only reason you don't like the way that is because you care. And that's all coming from love. But somebody you don't care about, it's like, okay, they said what they said. If they don't talk to me no more, I don't care. I'm not here to make you feel comfortable. This is how I feel. That's how you feel. And that's it. If you could be a fly on the wall and think the way that they handle that with them is not the way they handle that with the other person, you have a different connection. You're willing to go to the distance, and then there's an emotion. That's why I said it's a level of love, because I used to say that anger, and I still feel that way, anger is disappointed hope. You can't get me to a level of anger unless there's that feeling of love. Even in traffic, somebody pissed me off. It's like, what the fuck? It comes and it goes. Oh, somebody does some bull, you cut them off. I'm done with that. I'm not dealing with you no more. It's done. It's easy fixes. You're out of my life. That was a moment. It's done. The road rage was a moment. You were a moment, because I'm not about to let you irritate me. I'm not going to let my time, my energy. Bye. We're done. And you move on. When you have decided, I want this, I'm ready to give. I don't even know all that I have to give, but it's worth it. I want to try. You start getting stretched. You're committing, you're communicating, you're growing, you're trying to figure stuff out because you want it.
Well, then I definitely needed to at some point add that understanding what I'm willing to do before I walk into something. And I suggest anybody else don't do what I did and just look at compromising and being patient. You definitely have to add in that other element, having some type of understanding of who you willing to do that for.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you do that for the wrong people.
And you're mad later on because we've heard it.
Because you're not paying attention that there were subtle signs that they wasn't willing to give you what you were about to give.
Oh, you'll go to war for them, but they not lifting a finger for you. And that's the worst kind of hurt to experience. And I'm making sure we reiterate, not just the love with spouse, family, friends. That's the worst. And you experience a lot. I think it hurts more for me for family. Friends, it's like it's not blood. But your family, it's almost like an unspoken rule, like, you're my family. We got each other. And I think when those things are revealed, where it's like, wow, really? It's hurtful. And it's a harsh truth. You got to figure out at this point, Maya Angelou says, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them. And I added on, make the necessary adjustments and move forward with intent and purpose. Now that I know what I'm dealing with, what am I going to do about it? And what you just said a few moments ago about the compromise and you getting in there and you giving, and it's like, wait a minute, I don't want to do that with everybody. That's a learning process because you were young when you were doing that. But I think even in the midst of you loving somebody and it's jacked up, sometimes actually experiencing that, you find that out on the back end. And that sucks, but it can happen. Like, wait a minute, this is a deal breaker for me. You're trying to really see how much you can get away with. You know, and it's like, that's not right. Yeah, like, what are you doing? Now, this is not love at this point. I'm a sucker. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
You really clowning over here. I'm just going to beat you into the ground. I'm going to take you for everything you have. Like you said, it's like, wait a minute, I love me. I'm feeling some type of way. You said you began to feel like you lost yourself in that because you were so concerned with making sure they were good. They were feeling the love and that feeling where the effort wasn't being reciprocated. And that sucks too. So in asking, are you ready for love? I think that there's some things you check off, like I'm okay with this, and then who you're looking at to give in that capacity. Are they worthy of it? We've said this before. If you get me, it's like, they got me. I did my research in a sense, meaning like I put the time in.
The box is checked out.
Yeah,
at the beginning.
Dang, they got me because I never would have saw this coming. But if you know, like, nah, you was on some bull when I met you, your track record was garbage, and here you are being exactly who I knew you were, that's on you. Because you walked in that with your eyes wide open. So you getting everything that you should have expected to get because you knew what you were dealing with. But that's what surprise is. Wow, the shock. I never would have thought. So in that, like that thing you sign off on where it's like, do you release us of any liability in the event of? It's like, all right, I've thought about it, put the time in, I'm ready to sign off on. In the event that this goes awry or something else happens or I get stretched in some areas, I'm okay with that because I feel like this is worth the risk. It's worth me going the distance and trying to make this a beautiful thing. And anything, I believe, worth something, you're going to have to work at it, to fight for it. It's not going to always be happy, yay moments. You're going to have to really get in there on those horrible moments where it's just like, we're going to have to pick up the pieces. And that's different for everybody. But that's when that love kicks in, because when it's all kind of, like you say, the makeup is off. You're old, your body looks different, or when your kid is unlovable because they've done stuff that you were totally like, I didn't even rear you like this. Who is this? You know, who are you? That love still kicks in because it's a compassion you have. And it's just like, we got to figure this out. What do we got to do? Let's start to resolve, repair. How do we move forward from here and get ourselves in a better place?
And that takes time. That takes tons of time in terms of trying to grow that particular piece of you, because you really don't have a timetable when something is going to occur when you're being stretched. It just happens randomly sometimes. And it happens randomly with different situations or different relationships. You just say one with children where it's like, I didn't rear you like that. Then you have the one with your friends where it's like, I never would have thought. I don't necessarily know if it's geared towards this type of love, but it is a level. It was some podcasters, it was two girls, they were best friends or whatever. But cut a long story short, one of the friends decided to take the podcast to a different direction in terms of how they get paid. And I guess what she ended up doing was trying to draw up a contract where she got majority of the ownership and the percentages and the other person didn't, and the person that didn't get all that stuff was notified after the fact, and she felt betrayed and hurt by it. So she was like, you know, we were best friends and we always did everything 50-50. You were like my sister, this, that, and other. So I'm saying that's one of those stretchy moments where it's like, okay, you still my friend, but I never would have thought. But it's random. You just never know. It's circumstance.
Right.
Certain situations that you were put in will test that love of yours that you said.
COVID-19 pandemic.
Oh, that tested plenty of people, because it's like
all kind of stuff. Kids was home from school. The parents' love for their children 8 hours a day was tested.
Or do you really love your spouse the way you said you did, because y'all are no longer going outside? There is no, oh, I'm going to work and coming back, or I'm going out with the fellas, or I'm going out with the girls. It's just you and him.
Mm-hmm. And how long was
it's
it? That
like
started
how-
like in March of
from March
2020.
to this March is a whole year. But when it was really, really like, shutdown type thing,
Like
it
4 or
was
5 months.
from March to like August or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
So that's a long time to be inside of the house with the person that you dealt with through passing most times. I mean, not really through passing, but you know what I mean, where you had other things that kept your mind occupied. You just wasn't in her face, she wasn't just in yours. So you got to really see how much you guys had as far as camaraderie and that love. And I know there was some arguments happening and some misunderstandings because that's the first time you've been around each other that long consistently.
I think the stretch in that too is you had to see the silver lining. It's like, it's not that I don't love my child. I don't have a love for teaching. It's not that I don't love my spouse, male or female. It's that I love or value more of my personal time. I didn't realize how much I loved this time I had in between, whether he's commuting to and from work or when he goes away and hangs. So I think that when I say it stretches you, you have to identify, because I think that when we kept hearing stuff during the shutdown, people, you getting on my nerves. And it's just like, I don't think that they're directing the anger saying it's the person, but it's actually the circumstance and what you would normally be doing versus what you're doing now. And are you mad because they're there and they're a part of the garbage or miserable circumstances happening and you're having to adapt to with them in it? It's one thing if they were somewhere else. If the shutdown happened and someone was in a whole nother state and you guys talked and they would visit every now and again, you're still having those same phone calls. They still aren't in your personal space. It's still a schedule. You might tell them, I'm really bummed because normally I would be out at the gym or I have this mask on. You're able to share it with them, but they're not a part of it. So if they weren't able to change the perspective and really look like, I'm not mad at the person, I'm mad at the situation. I'm upset overall. And then you're here. I'm looking at you and I'm mad, but shit, you going through it just like me. You've been displaced too. So how can I really be mad with you? In a nutshell, if you're ready to risk it and try it and get stretched, go for it. If you've been thinking you're ready and now you've listened to some of the stuff we're talking about, because it's just open conversation, you might want to revisit like, I think I want to be with me a little bit longer. I think I want to not give to other people, or maybe I didn't really love that person because I just let that go.
The biggest one that I think you said thus far, aside from all the key points, is really people really don't understand how much their decisions affect the other person until they're in it. When you're by yourself, you can make all these decisions and they all fall on you. You choose to leave a job, spend money here, do this, do that, be reckless one day, whatever. It's like, damn. Okay, I gotta eat that bullet. But when you're dealing with a situation where it could affect somebody else indirectly, that I think is one of the biggest things. It's like, okay, I'm making these decisions, but whatever decision I choose to make, I have to always keep in mind that somebody else could get affected by it.
But I've had someone get mad at me because of that though. Where it's like, I can't do nothing because of you.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. That's one of the things I think people don't think about. You think you can move the same way that you did when you were by yourself, and people don't understand that you can't. It's a lot of shit that you will not be, and I don't want you guys to think that this is a bad thing. I just need you to understand that when you're going into a situation where it's specifically children and relationships, because it can be a little different with friendships, but those decisions that you make when you're in those type of situations, that's one of the biggest ones I don't think people really think about and take into account when they're talking about, I want to have a little mini-me, or relationship goals. Like, you ain't really thinking about, I can't just, as a dude, go out at 10 at night no more, just randomly. It could be for a variety of reasons. Why are you going out this late at night? What's out there? You know what I'm saying? Or she's thinking about your safety because of all the racial injustices if you're somebody of color. It could be different things. Why are you out there at that time of night? But when you was by yourself, you can do that. And it still don't mean that it was the wisest thing to do, but it ain't something that concerns someone else. But I really believe that's one of the bigger things that people don't take in consideration when they're saying, oh yeah, I'm ready for this. Nah, not if you ain't willing to make decisions decisions that can indirectly affect someone, good or bad.
And if you aren't ready, some people have to get ready, because I saw a social media influencer. She was sitting with her son and they were asking her questions about you being a new mom and do you want another kid? And she said in the same sentence, I love my son, but kids ruin relationships. They ruin them. But I love my son. I believe she loves her son. But when you say they ruin relationships, it was like, wow, when she said that, I wonder how she deals with that when she looks at her son and she feels like he ruined her relationship. That's kind of wild.
Yeah, she would have had to explain that one to me.
No, but I think she
meant it in good.
She did.
Goodwill.
She
I'm
did.
just saying, hearing it like that.
But she's getting stretched. I always look at stuff and try to look at the different perspectives. Somebody else immediately would have been like, how could she say that?
No, I would.
How could you?
How could you? Yeah. To explain to me. I
right? How could you say
it?
But for her, I believe she meant I love my child, but the feeling and the stretch of it and everything she's experiencing is like whatever the state of the relationship she had is in, it's a result of this child. It's not their thing, or how do we figure out how to get through this? Or maybe he don't want to be here now because I have a child and that's immature, and it's children ruin relationships. But I love my son. It's probably like he ruined it, but I'm gonna love my son though, and I'm gonna keep it pushing. So in that, it's like, oh, she'll probably look back at this at some point as you grow and you stretch, and she begins to fall more in love with her child, and how love kind of changes you in your perspective. And she'll probably look back at that statement and be like, wow. Because I don't think she meant it that way.
No,
that's but it's just like, wow.
I think she meant to say something else, but that was the only way she can think of to say it.
Yeah.
I've done that before where I know I meant something else, but the way it came out could have been received very badly.
Yeah. No, it happens.
So that's why I said, yeah, I definitely would have been like, well, what do you mean by your kid ruined the relationship?
Or she was saying to her viewers, I love my son, but children ruin relationships. So that's what she was conveying to them. So someone taking that in would say, wow, dang, kids will ruin your relationship. I'm not having no kids because they'll ruin my relationship, and so on and so forth. So that's why it was very interesting. But in that, the piece I took from it was like, oh, the stretching of love is happening. And if you weren't ready, you got to get ready now, because you got to give in a capacity to a little person that's dependent on you, that needs to be loved on and cared for and protected and all that. And you're going to get stretched, and you're going to know at some point like, oh, I wasn't ready, but I'm going to do this. Or for some people, give their children up for adoption. I don't think it makes them necessarily bad people. They know somewhere like, I can't give the way that I'm going to have to give. Are you ready for love? If you're not, if you are, I mean, I just hope that there's a takeaway from it. I'm constantly growing in different areas. I know Lou's constantly growing, and we're getting stretched. We're having love for humanity, because they'll do some stuff for you, be like, can't stand people. But, you know, that's in the relationship, your relationship with humanity. Like, can it really get any dumber? Is this real? Is this really happening? And so just continue to equip yourself, because I believe that relationships are happening even when you don't think they are. You look up and there's a friendship that's blossomed, or you care for somebody in a capacity because of the time that you've put in, or it's like, wow, I really want to see this person win, and I didn't know that I felt this strongly about that. If you want to keep this conversation going, you have any questions, comments, concerns, or a suggested topic, you can always shoot us an email at realfitradio@gmail.com. Our podcast drops every Monday. You can catch the latest snippet on our Instagram at realfitradio. If you're not following us, you definitely should be. As always, we hope this inspired, impacted, or empowered someone. Until next time.